This is Dan Bolen, and I'm the host of the podcast, The Courage to Be Courageous, where people can come from all over the United States and hear stories of people who have embraced their fear and use courage to get through it. Our podcast also talks about organizations that support the LGBTQ plus community. And we've had some powerful podcasts in the last few months, and hopefully you'll get a chance to hear those if you have not. Another thing I want to talk about today is the sense of community. All of us need community. It's a normal thing for people to want to be a part of a community. And one of the communities that I have found that has been exceptional in my life is live theater. If you remember, several weeks ago, we talked to Scott Wilford, who was the president of the Diversionary Theater out of San Diego. I had a chance to see several productions there. They were outstanding. And one of the organizations that I support and are a member is the Phoenix Theater Company. And we have a wonderful guest today, Marisa Butler, who is the Director of Development for the Phoenix Theater. Now, a little bit about Marisa. She started with the theater 15 years ago, I believe. She started with a director of sales and then went into director of patron engagement. And then she now is director of development. And Marisa, we are so proud and excited to have you today. And I can just say from my own experience, I'd like to share one thought. My partner, John, had never been to live theater before, never had been. And we started several years going to the Phoenix Theater. And we both are hooked on it. Some of the best productions I've seen, some of the best acting I've seen. It's incredible. And one of the things we're going to really talk about later on in our podcast is find a theater, a live theater in your community. Because if you don't know what you're missing. It's an exceptional opportunity to find a community, whether you're gay or heterosexual, a great community. So, Marisa, I'm done talking. It's time to hear you talk a little bit about the Phoenix Theater. Welcome to my podcast.
Dan. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about the mission statement, the value statement of the Phoenix Theater.
Yeah, I love to start with our mission and value statement. And in part because I think it really does explain a lot about who we are and how we envision the community of theater, as you were talking about. But also because it's important to know that before any of the senior leadership team gets together to make decisions about our programming or what we're going to do or our strategies or our buildings, we start with this statement and remind ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. So I'd love to read it to you. Our mission statement is the Phoenix Theater Company creates exceptional theatrical experiences by using the arts to articulate messages that inspire hope and understanding. Our value statement goes on to say, the Phoenix Theater Company believes the arts are essential because they foster the hero within. They create a greater understanding of cultural and political differences, and in an era of simulated virtual gatherings, continue to provide a forum in which the community from all walks of life can gather live and in person. We value theater as a place where people can be accepted regardless of race, creed, orientation, or color. The arts is where anyone can go, popular, geeky, broken down, or affluent, and be welcomed. Theater lives where we wish the whole world lived. By inspiring empathy and the ability to see things from another's point of view, we encourage qualities that lead to visionary leadership and build communities in which we are proud to work and live.
Wow, that's incredible. Great mission statement, great value statement as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the two major executives that I'm familiar with, Michael and Vincent. Tell us a little bit about them and how long they've been there. Now, one thing I want to say,
Sure.
isn't the Phoenix Theater now in its 104th season?
It is. It is our 104th season, and we've been on the campus that we're on, which is Central and McDowell, for 100 of those 104 years.
Wow.
We started when Marie Butlercourage gave us her stagecoach to utilize as a theater, and she ended up working out a lease with the city to say that she basically paid the rent for $1 a year and put the down payment on it for the first 100 years, and said that the theater needs to always be on that property. And so we've been there ever since.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So Michael Barnard, who's our producing artistic director, he is a Phoenician born and raised. He's one of those rare ones that grew up here and just loves the Valley and has really committed his life to enhancing and advancing the arts here in Phoenix. He had worked and done some work with the Phoenix Little Theater back when we were a community theater, and then over the years sporadically. But he came to be the artistic director about 25 years ago. And when he came back to the organization at that time, I think we were maybe we had $50,000 in the bank. I think we were $150,000 in debt, and we had a huge list of patrons, half of which weren't even alive anymore. So
That's not a good thing.
It was an undertaking, to say the least. And the first show he actually did as artistic director was How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. So the irony of all of it was pure Michael Barnard, but he has really done a tremendous job as artistic director to really shape and mold the future of this company, and has brought it forth to be what it is, which is an extraordinary place to see musical theater here in Phoenix. Vincent Van Vliet, who is our executive director, he also started 26 years ago. He was a stage manager for the organization. And if you don't know what a stage manager does, they really run the show from behind the scenes. And so everything that happens on stage that you see is called by a stage manager. So it takes a very specific type of person, very organized person to do that work. And he ended up becoming first the general manager, then the managing director, and now the executive director. And he has really been the driving catalyst of our revenue and strategy campaigns over the last, 20 years or so since he took the helm as general manager.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And of course, Michael and Vincent are married, and they've obviously must have met at the Phoenix Theater, I would assume.
They did meet, and were long distance. And then I think Michael convinced Vincent to be here full time because he was working here. He had been here working in capacity as a stage manager, but not full time. So, I think it was written in the stars. And, of course, when I first started in 2008, they were not married yet.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get married until, of course, it became legal to get married.
Correct.
And, and so it's a wonderful organization with, being managed by two people who have very different talent and lend everything that they have to the organization.
And I think what's also fascinating is how large the theater has grown. And you're kind of in an expansion mode right now. You're actually expanding the facilities. Marisa, tell us a little bit about what's happening with that.
Well, as far as the growth goes, I have been there since January of 2008. And when I started, it was a $4.5 million organization. And we were really looking to grow and really start to operate in a more sophisticated manner in terms of the patron experience, having concessions, having food, having music, having, people who worked full time to ensure that the experience was really wonderful and unique when you walk into our space. And today I can say that we are a $13 million organization And having achieved that throughout COVID and throughout, the different economic turns for theatrical venues here in the United States is pretty impressive. We're working on expanding what is now our Hormel Theater. We started this project back in 2008 when we had a bond from the city, and the goal was to build a 500-seat theater that had technical capabilities that were more in line with current Broadway shows or other larger regional companies, with a full tower fly loft, an orchestra pit, and all the bells and whistles of animated scenery and things like that. Because 2008 turned out to not be a banner fundraising year, what we ended up doing was using the bond money to create what is now the infrastructure of what will be that 500-seat theater. And so what we're finally able to do now, so many years later, is break ground on building that theater as it was meant to be. And we have been producing in it since 2012, 2013. So we've been able to grow our audience base and really experiment with some of the programming that we've chosen.
Excellent, excellent. And I have to share this with you because when COVID hit, of course we couldn't go inside to the theater. So what was to me remarkable is the Phoenix Theater actually went outside. I believe next to it is the Methodist campus right now, or I remember it's a little the church, and right in the middle you constructed a stage, pretty remarkable, and we all sat on these little Adirondacks plastic chairs, and
which were surprisingly comfortable.
They were. I was surprised. I think it's one of the times that John and I went out, and it actually was cold one night, but it was fascinating to show the dedication they had. Even during COVID, providing live theater for the community of Phoenix. And I just think that's outstanding to be able to do. And the productions were outstanding. And the stage was beautiful. They did a great job with that as well.
Thank you. And, what was really interesting about that year is that was our centennial, Dan. And so we were really, doing it up, celebrating the fact that we were 100 years old. We were knee deep again in that capital campaign to expand the theater, and we just thought it was going to be a tremendous year. So I think one of the things that we had always been so proud of is the fact that in the 100 years we had been around, we'd never closed. Not through the wars, not through the economy.
That's incredible.
We had never shuttered our doors. And so when we were forced to shutter our doors, I think we took it as that next challenge of how are we going to continue to sustain ourselves and thrive in this environment. And so the idea was born to create a stage and build a stage with all of our equipment that we couldn't be using inside the theater, and bring it outside, and then select programming that allowed us to do outdoor shows. And you should have seen some of those early rehearsals with, people singing to each other and love stories, and they can't touch, and they've got, masks and the plastic over the masks, and but keeping on performing was the goal, and so that's what we were able to do, and luckily, because of the great lengths that our front of house team went to make sure that people stayed safe, and we followed all of the COVID policies and procedures. We were one of 13 companies in the United States that regained its equity contract much earlier than anyone else in the country, because we were showing such wonderful dedication to ensuring that our actors and artists and our audience members. Yeah, we were out there from November until May.
Okay, good.
Running shows.
Good. Now, I believe, didn't one of the productions actually end up going to Broadway?
So we, off Broadway, actually. We produced a show called Americano.
That's the one.
And talk about courageous theater, Dan. This story was conceived and co-written by Michael Barnard, and was really about the crisis of what is happening with our dreamers here in the United States. And rather than talk about it politically, this story really was about the family members and the people who lived this reality. And it was about a real character, a real person here in Arizona, whose name is Tony Valdovinos.
Mm-hmm.
We loosely based the show on his life and his experiences, finding out he was a dreamer when he went to join the Marines at 18 years old.
Wow. Okay.
And and so we put it through what we would call our incubation system at the theater. So we workshopped it, we put it in our New Works Festival, eventually premiered it on stage, and then we're able to take it to a Moss Theater in New York, which is a New Works incubator there, and then took it to New World Stages off Broadway.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, that shows you the quality of the actors and the quality of the commitment that Michael and others had to be able to do that. That's outstanding as well.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about something that I think our audience will find interesting. Steven Spielberg is, of course, everybody knows who he is, probably the biggest producer, I guess you would say, in the history of movies. Actually did his first, and the reason I think it's fascinating, when you enter the theater, there's a picture of Steven Spielberg pointing to the Phoenix Theater sign. I think it is Little Phoenix Theater. And tell us about, this is the first movie he ever showed. And I think he was a senior in high school, correct? Tell us a little bit about that, Marisa.
Yes. So Steven Spielberg had spent some time in our prop shop and was familiar, his family was familiar with Phoenix Little Theater. He was a senior in high school at Arcadia High School, and he had put together his first film that was sort of a science fiction type film and was looking for a place to premiere it. And he ended up asking a couple of different movie theaters if they would show it for him, none of which I guess agreed. And so they asked Phoenix Little Theater. Phoenix Little Theater said, absolutely, come on in. We'll put the screen down and we'll premiere it for you here. So he ran the film and his father ran the soundboard. And they did 2 performances of it. I believe it was called Skylight. And I think it was a somewhat early version of Close Encounters, what became Close Encounters for the third time. But he ended up doing 2 nights, and I think he profited about $5 all told. So he paid for the film and made a small profit, and then he moved to Los Angeles, and the rest is history.
Yes, it is. Yes. That's fascinating. And I think that, again, shows the commitment that Phoenix Theater had toward helping a newcomer come on, even though he was still a high school student. I think that's remarkable as well, too. Marisa, let's talk a little bit about your experience and how theater has been so important to you in your life. I think it's very touching to hear your story and that you were raised in LA and how theater was a place for you to get stability and a place for you to feel accepted. Can you tell us a little bit about your story on that?
Well, I did grow up in LA, and I grew up during a time when there was a lot of violence and a lot of turmoil happening in the city at that time. As a child, I remember growing up and feeling scared a lot of the time and unsettled a lot of the time. And I ended up finding the theater program when I was quite young, auditioning for a school play. My first role was E-Tree. I was a Christmas tree from outer space in the school play. And even then, at a pretty young age, I think it was about 8 at the time, I remember feeling very safe, and I remember feeling very at home. The community of people who were putting on the show, teachers, the other kids, the parent volunteers, they saw the work and the joy of what they were doing as critical to the elementary school process. And as I got older and life got harder, my mom was a single mom. We were my brother and I were latchkey kids. I mean, we were really kind of on our own a lot of the time because she had to work. And theater really became my family. It became that place where no matter what grade I was in, what school I was in, if we moved and I was new, it was the place you could always go and find a community and find a group of people who are willing to accept you and take you in and, put you in the show and just embrace you. And it was always unconditional, which was such an unusual and wonderful thing to find because, I was growing up as a teenager. There are very few places that ever feel completely like you're accepted unconditionally, and that's what the theater clubs always provided throughout my school.
Wow. And that's why you did such an incredible job at Phoenix Theater and continue to do, is because that's been your home, let's say a home away from home, and gave you the security and the security and the safety net that you needed. And that's encouraging as well. And I think that's important. I wanted Marisa to share that about her story because it's a powerful comment, thinking whether you're gay or trans or heterosexual, it's a wonderful place for you to go and see stories of people's lives that perhaps will enhance your life in some way. And I think that's a powerful comment as well. I've always loved live theater. It's always been a part of my life. And I really want to encourage our podcasters to find a theater in their community, a live theater in their community. And I'm going to talk to Marisa about this for a second in this right now. You're not afraid to take on controversial subjects. You're not afraid to take on some controversial subjects. Tell us, well, you have one this year that's going to be Tiananmen, right? And
Tiananmen is, a brand new not a world premiere, but a Southwest regional premiere that we are doing at the top of next season, this September.
And that, of course, everybody knows. And, of course, now I know. Tiananmen, remember, was the riot in China where many of the college students were killed because of fighting against the government, communism. And there were people that didn't want that to be told, didn't want to have that told. And sometimes pressure can be put on those, but it's going to be told. It needs to be told. People need to understand the power of that as well. And
I think that's our job. It's our responsibility, really, to tell those kinds of stories because they need to be told. And I think that once people are exposed to things that they may think they don't want to see or that they think they may not enjoy or they won't understand, once they're given an opportunity to see that different perspective or to see the humanity in the story, I think that it moves people. I think it touches people and it's quite surprising to them.
Excellent. I want you to share the story of a production that you did and where a daughter brought his dad, I'm assuming his dad and mom, her dad and mom rather, a ticket to the show. And she was scared. And tell us a little bit about that, because that's a story that you shared with me yesterday when we talked about this.
Yeah, this always stuck with me because it's sort of the definition of why we do what we do. But there was a young woman who bought tickets for her parents to come to the theater, and it was for a production that we were doing at the time called La Cage aux Folles. And La Cage aux Folles deals with the story of two gay men whose son is coming home to introduce him to his fiancée, but the son doesn't tell the fiancée or the fiancée's family, who are rather conservative, very traditional, that his parents are gay, that it's two men. And they go to great lengths to try and hide that from for the son from his fiancée and the family, and antics, ensue. But while they were watching it, the daughter was so nervous and became terrified because her parents were so conservative, particularly her father, and she didn't know what the show was about, and she just thought, "Oh goodness, he's just going to kill me when we get home for bringing him to this show, and for making him sit through this. This is terrible." And her hands were wringing wet. Like, it was really stressful for her. And what ended up happening was they went out after the show, and he said to her, "If I had known what this show was about, I wouldn't have come. But having seen this and having really absorbed the story, I have such a different perspective on homosexuals and people who are gay. I have such a newfound understanding of who they are as people. And I don't think I would have ever known that if I hadn't seen this production." And she was relieved. And the great news, of course, is that he continued to come to the Phoenix Theater Company and see a multitude of shows, and felt a lot more open-minded about hearing other walks of life that maybe he wasn't familiar with, and maybe he thought in some capacity he wasn't in agreement with.
Wow, that is an incredible story as well. And that shows the power of what live theater does. It can actually change people's
Absolutely.
mind when they hear the story of something that may be difficult for them. And they can embrace that once they hear the story and the truth. I think that's such an incredible comment. I want to talk to Marisa. This is, I think, even expansive of what the Phoenix Theater has done. They not only do live theater, which of course is what they do, but they also go into other areas, sick children in the hospital. We talked about the Phoenix Theater. We talked about Hospice of the Valley. I think this is powerful. Marisa, give us some details on those two things.
Sure. Our two flagship programs at the theater, one is Partners That Heal. And Partners That Heal is a group of professional actors who go into hospitals and crisis facilities. Phoenix Children's Hospital, you mentioned Hospice of the Valley, the different banner hospitals. And what they do is they utilize theatrical techniques to engage with patients, and they utilize their thoughts, their favorite things, their words into songs and stories and games that entertain them. And there are so many benefits to utilizing theater in various ways like this, because the parents, for the first time, get an opportunity to see their kids feel joy or laugh for what feels like a lifetime for those kids that are in the hospital. But it also helps them to open up and communicate. And because the theatrical games really require the kids to participate and communicate, they have found that they're able to work a little bit more easily with the child life specialists and the doctors who are coming in after the Partners That Heal interventions, because they're feeling more open and able to be more vulnerable, which is helpful in their treatment. It's been extraordinary in the Hospice of the Valley working in their new dementia center because the people that they're working with there seem to have a different place in their minds for memory when it comes to songs and skits and games that they're playing over and over again, where they're incorporating their own thoughts and their own memories into the work. So it's just extraordinary.
That's incredible.
How they've been able to use those techniques to really help those who are suffering in our community. Our summer camp is Phoenix Theater Summer Camp, which is a theatrical camp, but it's inclusive. And when I say inclusive, I mean that it is inclusive of many children, almost up to 15% of our campers actually, who require some form of accommodation, whether that's neurological, physical, behavioral, mental. And so they're able to get trained help by our counselors who work with Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center to get the things that they need to be able to, to have full days at camp with their atypical peers. And it's extraordinary for those who, are engaging and working and collaborating with these kids who have accommodation, because it teaches those kids that people think differently and learn differently and perform differently and need things differently. So it teaches everyone who's participating about collaboration and communication on a different level. And it changes people. It changes their perspective as teenagers and young children, being able to work with kids who are different from them.
Oh, that is fascinating. And one of the things that I think is so remarkable, Phoenix Theater, and Marissa and I talked about this when we did the preview, about embracing the whole person. And I said, well, Marissa, what does it mean, embracing the whole person? Phoenix Theater wants to embrace the whole person. And I believe you're the one that set up a data program, if you want to say that, on how you were able to really embrace the whole person in being able to, well, I'll let you explain it because you will do it much better than I will try. It's a great program.
Well, when I first started with the Phoenix Theater Company, I was really brought in to try and help strategize around audience development, right? How could we retain the people that were coming to see certain shows? How could we create an experience that was different than other venues? And I had come from a background in corporate retail management that was very data-driven and patron-centric, meaning the things that we do, the decisions that we make, and the policies and practices that we put in place need to think about the customer first. I have found since I've been there are so many people who come to us from so many different paths, whether they're joining the board or they're coming to a special event at the theater or they're coming to see a show that they just like that show in particular, or their friend has brought them, or they're volunteering. What we did was we invested in a database that's a POS system, basically, which is where we keep all of our customer information. We invested in one that allowed us to record and document all of the different ways that people interacted with us so that we could see the whole patron. So we could see all of the different ways that they were involved with us, whether they were volunteering with us or attending events or coming to shows or subscribers. And we were able to meet them where they were and then talk with them really personally about what their next step in their journey with us was going to be. And we started really ensuring that when you walk into our space, that there was consistency in service from, whoever greeted you at the door, to the ushers who were scanning your tickets, to the bartenders who were taking your order, to the will call staff who were giving you your tickets. We wanted everyone to feel like you were walking into a community that was your home.
Yes.
And
so I feel that
us.
way. I totally feel when I go there. I feel it is my community. It is my home.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel a place there. And many of the people, we have many friends that are senior members of the Phoenix Theater. Why did I say senior?
I know, senior.
Well, they're kind of in my age group. Let's put it that way. Senior and younger.
How long they've been coming.
Yeah, senior and younger.
Senior members.
It's a powerful. Yeah, it's a power. It's just an incredible theater, and I have to talk about the situation. I mean, treating the whole person. I mean, that shows the commitment they have toward the community of humanity. Getting to know the whole person, getting to understand them. It doesn't have to do necessarily with who we are, where we came from, what our gender is. It has to do with getting to understand and know us so they can be able to give us some incredible shows that are important to the people that come to the theater. I think that's incredible. And tell them about the concierge. This one was
Yes,
this was
yes.
shocking to me. Tell them about it, Marissa.
So seeing a show is all well and good, but the entire experience has to match the quality of the show, right? So we had confidence in the fact that they would see something that was a wonderful product. But we had to ensure that every time you called in or every time you came into our space, that the experience you were getting was of value and matched what that quality that you were getting on stage. And so one of the concepts that Vincent Van Vliet implemented at the theater was the idea of subscribers having concierge managers. So it was a program that had existed in a couple of other theaters around the country, but a little bit haphazard. And most of that came from the fact that there was so much transience amongst the sales team or the people who were dealing with the direct public. What we decided to do was invest fully in those people, make them full-time employees, pay them well, invest in them, train them well, and then make them concierge managers, which means that if you're a subscriber at the organization and you have an exchange or you want to add a ticket or you've got an issue with something, based on whatever your last name is, you have that one person that is your person that you call. And so we talked yesterday, Dan, about, if you've got to exchange your ticket, you're calling Adriana. And you're not calling a box office and you're not leaving a message and you're not having to press one or whatever it is. You're actually getting the direct line for a human being that knows you, knows your history. And Adriana can pull you up and say, "Hi, Dan. Oh, what did you think of the prom? And you've got Dreamgirls coming up on Friday. Are you looking forward to it?" And it becomes a conversation between people. And what else is live theater than us promoting and perpetuating connection between people? And so if we don't have personal relationships as much as we can with as many as we can, then we feel like we're not doing our job as a theater venue.
And I have to give a plug for my concierge, Adriana.
Yeah.
All of us, they are so good about changing the seats. Okay, I had something come up. I can't do it on that day. And I call Adriana and she'll say, "Well, let me see what day would be a good day for you. Give me some dates. I'll try to get you to the same section in the same area as close as we can to your original tickets." I mean, I'm like, I've had to change a number of times because change happens. And they are so good about making the changes. And even I can't say enough about the concierge there. And let me tell you what Adriana did for John and I. We went to our first production several years ago. Of course, in the seats, we had a seat, I think C6 or whatever. There was a letter from Adriana on my chair, "Welcome me to the theater." I mean, I was like, oh, first of all, to take the time to be able to do that, to treat me as an incredible patron. It shows the depth of commitment of the Phoenix Theater and the people. They're like a family. It's like being part of a family. And
they are.
And it's incredible. It's incredible. And that's the type of service that you get at the Phoenix Theater. And I just want to commend them for that. One of the things I just want
to... And it's genuine. It's genuine.
Of course it is, yeah.
There's nobody who works there who doesn't want to establish those relationships with people, on a personal level and on a meaningful level. And so it does definitely attract a certain type of personality to work at the theater. And that's why so many of us have been there for so long.
And I want to make a comment with Marissa too, that I was able to meet Marissa at I guess it would say kind of a fundraiser. I was able to meet her with my partner, John, and I told her to check out my book, The Courage to be Courageous. And I had an incredible time that evening. I've made the Phoenix Theater a part of my trust, part of my beneficiary. That's how much I believe so strongly in them. And so Marissa, several days ago, calls me on the phone. I was working out at the gym and was commending me, or you were commending me on you had just finished my book. And that's how personal she was. She had finished my book. She wanted to commend me and to tell me how much she enjoyed it. That's personal attention. In fact, I started getting tears in my eyes because of how heartfelt she was in telling me about my book. And that's the type of community, that's the type of family that the Phoenix Theater is. And Marisa, I want to commend you for that. That meant a lot to me, and thank you for that.
Well, you are so welcome, and thank you for telling your story. I mean, I told you I finished it. It was 10 o'clock at night, and it took everything in me to not call you. It's like calling a celebrity. So I said, oh my gosh, this is so weird because I know everything about you, and you know really nothing yet about me. So,
well, you know more than my family knows about me. Yeah, you know.
I told you though. I'm holding out hope that they're somewhere reading it in secret. You know.
Yeah. But, I know you enjoyed it, didn't you?
Yeah, so much so, and what I realized was the parallels between your experience and so many people that are reading this book, that you're helping with this book, because you don't have to be one thing or another to understand what it's like to feel shame, or to feel depression, or to feel torn, conflicted, and stressed and anxiety. And you normalize so much of what you went through, which I just think is an extraordinary gift to anyone who's reading your book. I mean, you know, you were talking earlier about theater and how it is such a welcoming community to the LGBTQ plus community. But it's interesting because as a heterosexual woman growing up in the theater, I just felt like everybody was exactly as they were meant to be, because I was so exposed to it my entire life. Like, there was never a question of whether or not if you were gay, or if you were trans, or if you didn't feel like you knew where you fit in, that you weren't going to be accepted in the theatrical community. And I think that's one of the most important things, and it's in our value statement. It's whether you are, you know, affluent, or you're poor, or you're Black, or you're white, or you're gay, or you're straight. There is a place for you on our stage, and there's a place for you in our audience, because at the end of the day, it is about telling the stories of human beings.
Wow. That is so powerful. I think a comment you made the other day was, judgment comes from fear and pain.
Oh, yes. Yes. Doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Fear and pain. And sometimes the more you know about, most times the more you know about something, the less you fear it. And I think that there are certain stories that you will see on stage that will touch you in a place that you may not even be, can heal you. And can heal different parts where you feel pain. It could even be subconscious. I mean, that's the power of live theater. That's the power of sitting in a place and being taken on a journey and just relinquishing yourself to that experience and allowing yourself to be in that room with other people, all experiencing the same thing. I mean, there's power in that, and it's palpable. I think people are often shocked if they've never been to the theater, what it feels like to be there in a live environment with things happening in front of you, with no screen, you know, to separate you, and no walls to separate you from the people around you. It's very powerful, and it's been around since the dawn of ages, you know, this art storytelling. And so the hope is that people will run out and experience that no matter where they live, and contribute to those communities. Because they need to stay around. And the state of theater right now in a lot of places is bleak, you know, trying to come back from COVID. And every bit of support helps. And there's the development director in me. But
and I want to share one story here before we complete our podcast. One of the things that Phoenix Theater did, one of the actors that has been there for a long time, Savannah, developed cancer. John and I were able to see her in the color purple twice. And the last time we saw her was her last performance before she was going into chemo and going to be able to fight, obviously, cancer. And we saw a tear in her eye because it was her last performance, which, of course, caused John and I to cry. And I was able to see that Phoenix Theater did a tremendous amount of fundraising for her. John and I both were able to contribute to the fund. Then she gave us, until she was not able, then she had someone else. She would give us a running progress of what was happening to those that contributed. This is what I'm talking about, family. And we were able to listen to see the fight that she was having, what she was going through, the weakness she was going through. And but then we didn't hear any podcasts. And then, so I touched base with you and I said, is Savannah okay? And you said yes. In fact, she's in the Dream Girls, which John and I are seeing tomorrow night. So there's a power right there of family. How family sticks together. It's just not about the theater. It's about the entire family. It's the whole person. And we are really a family. So I want to encourage all of you out there to look at the if you ever get to Phoenix, come and see a show at the Phoenix Theater. The Phoenix Theater's website is Phoenix Theater, TheATRE.com. And if you want to put the little hash mark support, you can do that. You know, and this is what's interesting is not only is your money, you're going to see some of the best entertainment from actors all over the world, probably. I mean, I think they're probably from all over the world, different parts of the world. But you're going to also help these other programs like Hospice at the Valley, the Phoenix Theater. You're going to be supporting those as well. So this is what I want to do. Invite our podcasters in your local community. Look live theater up. Give it an opportunity. Go see some shows. Support it financially. In any way that you want to support the Phoenix Theater financially, if you go on the website and look under that phoenixtheater.com support, there's ways that you can donate and support the Phoenix Theater. And I think that's just a wonderful, wonderful thing that you can do. And their subscription phone number, if I get this right, is 602-254-2151. I think I got that correct.
You did. That was exactly right. And Dan, if anybody is ever interested in supporting the organization, I will say there are just a ton of different ways to get involved, no matter what you have to give or what you want to give. And my phone number is also on the website, so they can literally pick up the phone and give me a call anytime. I'd be happy to talk with anyone about getting involved with the theater.
Okay, thank you. That's powerful. Thank you so much. Marisa, tell your two girls, I believe you have two daughters, and your husband, Eric.
I do.
Eric is your husband? Okay.
Yes, wow, good memory.
I did a little research. It's been such a joy having you on the podcast. You are a delightful person, and your words are going to be powerful for our podcasters to hear. Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure seeing you. I hope to see you very soon in the near future. Thank you for doing the podcast.
Yes, I hope to see you at the theater soon.
Okay, thank you. Marisa. Bye-bye now.
Bye.